How true is this statement? The statement on the very front of this title. I've seen a lot of folks out here on the streets, every color, every religion, every gender. You want to call yourself transgender or cisgender or whatever you want to call yourself. I've seen it, I've heard it. Out on the streets, the stuff that you guys are afraid of, we do absolutely experience that. We absolutely do have people who do those things to us. The fears that you guys have of what'll happen if you become homeless. Let me tell you how easy it is for you to become homeless. You got yourself a good boyfriend, right? You live together, right? Sure, you barely make ends meet, but between the two of you, you're able to make it. Now he beats the shit out of you. That's how quickly you can become homeless. Maybe you're trying to get the place from his mom. Maybe it's his mom who helped finance it. Maybe it's a situation where he's the one that gets arrested, but it doesn't make any difference. You still can't pay the bills. You're going to be out of that place. If you can't scrounge it together, and you probably won't be able to with today's economy, you're on the streets. That very same officer whose praises you've been singing because he arrested the guy who beat the shit out of you. But now you're on the streets, and that same officer comes up to you and treats you like a hobo. So I see black people out there getting treated like they're homeless because they're fucking homeless. They're fucking homeless. But these fucking idiots been brainwashed to believe that it's because they're fucking black. The only reason that they can't get up and out is because everybody in America must hate black people. He can see that the things happening to him are happening to hundreds of other homeless people around him. The same shit is happening to all of them, but this idiot's got it in his head that these people are all out here by choice. He's the only one who's out here because he was victimized into it. These people can't get the help because they're not going to these places that he's going to. Oh, and he sees white people in there, but he doesn't bother to mention that there's also Hispanic people there, and Asian people there, and black people there. He says, I saw all the black people just sitting there and waiting. That's what everyone does in the waiting room. Many of the white people that I go in with, they go, dude, I've seen like 4 Mexicans who don't even speak English who came in here after we came in here, and they've all gone up before us. This place is racist. Well, that would be the clinic in Boulder. The people behind the counter all spoke Spanish. The security guards spoke Spanish, and those Hispanic folks, they come in and they spoke Spanish. We didn't understand what they were saying. But me, instead of assuming, the worst because they were speaking Spanish, I know that there's lots of people who set up appointments with the clinic ahead of time. I know that there's 2 parts to the clinic. When I went in with Brett Roloff when he had an abscess, he was so angry. He was completely convinced that the reason he was being ignored with that big ass abscess was because he wasn't Mexican. Christopher Weaver was the same way. Didn't see it as racism. I did. Of course, I made mention to him of how fucked up they were thinking. So we got Mark Swanigan out there, and he's a black man, and he's constantly getting messed with by the cops. Absolutely. But he's homeless. And he calls us all honkies. Racist as fuck. He's from Chicago, Illinois. And then, of course, anytime anything bad happens to somebody else, I don't care. I'm from Chicago. I've been through worse. Then something little happens to him and he fucking throws a big goddamn tantrum. Because that little problem to you guys is a big problem to us. The cop wants to run your name, and you know that if you don't give it to him, and you don't give him your ID, he's going to beat the living fuck out of you because you're fucking homeless. So you give him your ID, and he goes back to his car, and he runs your name. Oh, no warrants. He said, oh, I knew there was warrants. And then he comes back, oh, Kerry, there's no warrants. All right, well, you shouldn't have fucking harassed me this the 5th time this week. Well, this time they don't give his ID back. He throws a fucking tantrum, is what they call it. Dude, you took my ID back to your vehicle. You ran my name and you didn't give my ID back. So what do? They arrest him. False charges, of course. Trying to claim that he's just being belligerent. That he's just out there trying to be a public nuisance. No, you fucking stole his ID, and it's going to be hell trying to get it back. It's a lot of extra steps when you're homeless, and you know, when you got the money for it, and 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 you got the money for it, but you don't stop to consider what about when you don't have the money for it? When you don't have a physical address and you don't have the other 2 forms of ID that are needed to get the ID back again. You know how I was finally able to get identification in Nebraska? Polly Olson. Polly Olson was the county clerk. She was also not the clerk of the courts. She worked with the clerk of the courts, Joan Hanson. And she signed that she had known me for 10 years or more. That wasn't true. I didn't move to Nebraska until I was 15, and I was 23 when I got my ID, or when I got my driver's license. So I got my ID prior to that. I was 20, I think. 21 maybe. But that's literally what it took. And my little sister, she stole my Social Security card from my mom, which was really nice of her. So I did have my Social Security card for a time. My mom claimed she didn't have it. So let me tell you, we got all these black folks out here that are completely brainwashed into believing that they're being victimized extra special because they're black and there could be no other reason. We've got women out here like Claire. She believes that she's being immorally and illegally targeted, that it is a thing against women, that if this was a man, that it would be different because there's a man in her life who did horrible things, and because he had a supportive family with some money, he was able to get people to listen. He didn't have to go in alone. His family helped him. His family made the calls with him and to these places, the places that needed to be called. Did these things happen to her because she's a woman? No, they happened to her because she's homeless. We got a whole bunch of women out here who are being victimized, and most of them believe that no man could ever possibly go through that no man out there that is going through that, they can literally see that men are going through it at a much higher rate and much more often than them, especially when it comes to the police. over and over and over, but they are convinced that these men have chosen it, that only they, being a woman, could ever possibly be targeted to that point, that these men must have asked for it. Getting sympathy from the other homeless people, you get a lot of sorries, but no understanding. A lot of them will tell you they understand, but they will make you do it alone, just as they had to do it alone, just to spite you, so they can throw it in your face at the end. Hey, I had to do it alone, and I got fucked. Why the hell would I help you? Nobody else helped me. Really, how many times did I help you when you asked? How you asked? Did you ever reciprocate? Did you ever speak up? Then we've got a whole bunch of gay people out on the streets. Now, this is one of the worst examples. You have any idea how many times I have been beaten up for being a homosexual? I've never been a homosexual. I've had lots of people be mean to me through my entire life, and they want to call me a homosexual. Not that word, though. They want to use the real mean ones, the N-word versions of gay. Kind of like in Chapel, Nebraska, a lot of people just called me N-word lover for a lot of years. When they realized I recorded everything, they stopped. When they realized it was a big deal, actually, that was probably the late 90s, early 2000s, after a lot of groundwork by me in Chapel, Nebraska, sticking up for people in town that were actually gay, sticking up for people that were actually of a different color in that area, although none of them stuck around long. Too much racism. Yeah, racism does exist. But that don't mean that when you're victimized as a homeless person, that it's because you're black. Yes, there is sexism that exists. That don't mean that when you're homeless and you're victimized the way that all the other homeless people around you are being victimized. That don't mean it's just specifically because you're a woman and only women go through this. And then we got a lot of homosexuals out on the streets, a lot of the LGBT community. Their families don't love them. They're ultra-Christian and could not possibly fathom having a child that's gay. Or worse, a child that's just not interested in that at all. They don't want to give you any grandkids. They're not interested. Between being treated like that, like somebody else's property, and playing video games, they'd rather go work at fucking Burger King so they can go home, play video games, and go to bed. They work at Burger King to pay for the bed, the electricity, the internet. That's how they're able to save enough money to pay next month's rent. Live very simply, do not have a bunch of extra expenses and a bunch of extra stress of somebody who believes that you need to bend over backwards for them at all points in time to give them every want. Your wants deprive people of their needs. So we've got all these folks out there on the streets that are completely convinced that the only reason that they're out there on the streets is because they're gay, and they're absolutely right about that. No, it's because people in their life were not accepting of them being gay. Kind of like a lot of people are not accepting of Tourette syndrome. Kind of like a lot of people aren't accepting of Down syndrome or cerebral palsy. You have no idea how many of us are thrown away by parents who are like, you know what, you're not perfect, you're not mine. My dad was praying that I wasn't his when we took that DNA test. Shit, I was in my fucking 30s. Late 20s, sorry. And he wanted to take a DNA test so he could sue my mom. Because I'm different. No matter what, because I'm a retard, everything that happened to me must have been my fault. Whenever I got beat up, it was my fault for being different. I should have tried harder to fit in. That's my fault for not trying harder to fit in. How many of you can imagine your parents telling you that it's your fault that people are beating you up for being different? Then there's the fact I got Tourette syndrome. I'll wink my eyes when I'm really nervous, and you use that as an excuse to pretend I'm on drugs. Police officer will literally shoot someone like me over that if they really want to. See, I was afraid of him. I thought he was on drugs. And that is how quickly and how easily it happens. I make things very loud and proud, and I like to make sure that it's being recorded if there's a police interaction, just in case of that. As a homeless person, each and every one of these individual groups saying it's only happening to them because they're Muslim. Oh, well, there's all this hatred towards Muslims in America, and we really push that. So obviously, as a Muslim homeless person, it must only be happening to you, and everybody else chose it because everybody in America can pretend to be Christian and get help. No, not necessarily. But yeah, you're right. At least in some aspect, yes, it is much easier to find a church. Churches are more likely to listen to you if you believe in their schizophrenic skyman. If you believe in their skyman, they're more likely to help. If I was in a Muslim nation, well, they're schizophrenic skyman. How about an atheist schizophrenic skyman? Might as well. The universe did it. The universe chose it. Okay. I've heard a lot of folks like that. Oh, it's the cosmos decide. That's still basic religion. Science is basic religion. Your solar panels get their power from the sun, don't they? These cosmic rays from the sky. You can change the terminology of all sorts of stuff. It's still the same thing. I had a parking lot I was staying in. It was a park and ride in Hood River. And I stayed there for quite a few months. I called it my secret volcano lair because it sounded cool. Not because I was living in a technologically advanced cave inside of a volcano with magma flows right next to my chamber and all sorts of cool stuff like that. No, I was at the base of Mount Hood. Mount Hood is a volcano. So technically, I was not being dishonest. That's my lair. It's where I live. It's where I lay my head. It is at the base of a volcano. And I am there frequently. Although it wasn't much of a secret. Now, when you've got a black man who is completely convinced that as a homeless man being treated the way that all of the other homeless people around him are being treated, he's got it in his head that it's because he's black and he's alone. And here's this white guy who has a chance of doing something about it. But you're telling this honky to get to the back of the bus because he's not black. He couldn't possibly know what it's like to have to go through this stuff. He just needs to quit complaining. He needs to do something about black people before that black man is ever going to do something for him. And blah, 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 fucking blah. So then there's this woman that he knows. He's helped her out a few times, right? He tries to tell his woman about the abuse that he's endured. And of course, she is completely convinced that it's because she's a woman that she's out there on the streets. And the reason that she can't get help is because she's a woman. No, Mark Swanigan, the black man, went in alone to try to get something done if he tried at all. Claire, again, going in alone if she tried at all. And I'm only using those people as examples, of very real life examples. But there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds more just like them in my personal life over the years. And keep in mind, I have not met most of the homeless people in America. I only know a small fraction of homeless people in America. Now, I go to a woman about abuse that I'm enduring, and I try to tell her about my abuse that just happened, and I'm trying to turn it in. And she throws a tantrum at me like a 5-year-old. That's what you like to call it if I do it, right? Except that the women out there will do it far worse because they're allowed. They're allowed to be more loud than us. They're allowed to be more abusive. They're allowed to be more physically abusive. Most of these women, they're adults. They've been taught since they were a kid, they're allowed to hit a man once for free. Some of them think it resets every 30 seconds, and they're out there hitting men as homeless women. They're out there hitting and assaulting homeless men. And then telling these homeless men that they can't possibly know what it's like to be in an abusive relationship. Holy fuck, just being friends with some of these women will get you beat up frequently. She gets drunk and she fucking misses her kids. She's going to fucking take it out on someone and you fucking know it. Get the hell away from her now. As quickly as possible. Rihanna Ingersoll, she'd get drunk. She wasn't even homeless. She was sort of homeless. She was living in an RV in a mobile RV park. When she missed her kids, she beat on somebody else's kids. If those kids hadn't been there, she'd have been beating on me. It was easier for her to beat on the kids. That's what she did. That's who she took it out on. And I had to fight for those kids' fucking rights. I had to make phone call after phone call to the fucking cops to try to get something done about her beating on them fucking kids. And ultimately, I had to break the law. Yes, I took some garbages out of the garbage can and set them on the ground. I didn't want to dump it all over the place. But, of course, I got charged with crimes that weren't committed because I'm a male. Because I'm homeless. It's primarily because I'm homeless. I was depending on Rihanna Ingersoll to care about my rights. But she didn't care about my rights because she didn't care about those kids' rights. And she didn't want to get in trouble. And she was angry with me when she did, in fact, get in trouble. But she got a slap on the wrist and they dropped the charges. She was actually beating on those kids. It is a lot more often that they will drop charges against a woman who has been caught red-handed and charge a male. Try to project it onto a male. It is a male's fault. And they won't drop the charges on the male. They don't care that he's innocent. They fucking know he's innocent. They don't fucking care. You're an easier conviction. So then we got these Muslims out there. They think that they're being exclusively victimized because they're Muslim. That they're the only ones out there that were victimized into it. Everybody else chose it because, of course, these black people have BLM, so people care about them. These missing and murdered indigenous people, they have special groups for them, so that means somebody cares about them. Are any of these groups doing anything beyond generalizing? Or being very pointedly towards one specific group? If we've got all these black people who are homeless, who are only fighting for black rights, but they're being victimized because they're homeless, They're making no progress. They're still homeless, and the black community still doesn't fucking care about them, because once you're homeless, none of these parts of society want to accept you as a person. You're a homeless person. Homeless people are all junkies. This is what you sell to the public. They're all criminals. You forced us into situations where our mere existence is criminal. See, unlike a black person, or a woman, or a man, or an Asian person, or a Christian, or a Muslim, homeless comprise components of every aspect of our society. Every religion, every gender, every size and shape, every skin tone, every belief, and nearly every walk of life. But you need to know that there's a big difference between slumming and bumming. What's slumming? Well, let's say Donald Trump decided that rather than sleep in his penthouse, he was going to go sleep under the Troll Bridge in Washington State while it's the rainy season. Bumming, what's that? Well, that's what you guys want to pretend all of us are. We're all useless, lazy bums, and we deserve to be out here. When you're injured, you're pissed off that workman's comp isn't paying as much as you think they should. When we're injured, you say, ha ha, you deserve it because you're fucking homeless. You chose it because you're homeless. You chose it. You chose it. Many of the people that I had to go to for help had shown their bias far before any of this happened. The whole typing at me when I'm being abused and I'm speaking out about my abuse on Facebook. One of them going all the way back to 2013. Amy Witcher is one of my predators from 2018, 2019 to present. She was supposed to be a friend. She is a relative. But all the way back in like 2013, I was homeless. And I was trying to explain the issues of being homeless. And Amy felt the need to get on there and type to me that she heard I chose to be homeless. Isn't that everyone's excuse? Yes, I absolutely have a Maserati drop top and $1 million mansion. That's what I do with all the money that I get panhandling, because everybody knows you pay me $1 million a day, just like you do to every other homeless person. And therefore, all these homeless people are choosing to go out there and hold signs when really they just live in penthouses like Donald fucking Trump and drive around in a brand new goddamn Maserati every year. Maserati drop top. Got to make sure to say that it's a drop top or a convertible, because every one of these stories is always a high-end sports car with a drop top. Isn't it? Oh man, I seen this guy, brand new Corvette man, fucking out there panhandling, saying he's a disabled veteran. Man, I saw that guy. You know that guy? You know that guy who's got the army pants on, and he's got the hair that's a little too long, and he's got that hat that's got a bullet hole in it, right? But it's not a real bullet hole. And then, of course, you literally know the guy, right? You've been to the coffee shop when the guy is pulled up his legs so that he can adjust. What does he have there? A prosthetic. He's holding that sign saying he's a disabled veteran. He is a disabled veteran. He's not out there trying to display his fake leg, though. He's out there with BDU bottoms. He's got a boot strapped to each sort of foot. One of them's real, one of them ain't. But of course, this guy's going to tell you about how your homeless friend, whose camp that you've been to 100 times, you've had dinner with the man many times. He talks about going to the VA. You've even given him a ride to the VA a time or two down in Denver, right? And you people who want to very loudly and openly in public They see him and they want to berate him in front of public and draw everybody's attention to him. And when he walks away, that's right, bitch, that's right, walk away, bitch. All the man would have to do is simply lift his trousers a little bit. Let that guy see that stained piece of metal. That thing you should have had refitted 8 months ago, but you couldn't make it to your fucking appointment because they decided to give you an appointment in fucking Montana. The Denver VA won't take you because you don't live in a house, basically. You just sit in their parking lot going, man, how am I going to come up with the money to get all the way up there? The VA benefits are supposed to cover this, aren't they? Yeah, but you have to have an address, and you got to have your VA representative, and you don't have one of those because you're new to the area. You got victimized into moving from the last area. Or you've been here so long that people just basically blow you off. Oh, well, he's been here long enough, he's choosing to. He could have panhandled enough to get unhomeless. So we got a lot of veterans that are angry. They're out on the streets, and they see other veterans that are getting these things that they're not getting. And they explain to other veterans in their unit, hey, man, you and I both served in Iraq. Both of us served together. All right, you are living the lap of luxury. You get to see your family. You've got kids now. I'm out here on the streets, man. I'm more injured than you were. Why are you getting all of this help and I'm not? Well, this is supposed to happen and that's supposed to happen. All right, well, I've tried those things. Well, I don't know what to tell you, bud. So we got all these veterans out there who want to talk about how they fought hard for this country, how they served their country. What did they do most of the time? Manual labor. And they want to say, well, if I ain't got a say-so, nobody else should. Civilians shouldn't have a say-so if our veterans don't have a say-so. If our veterans aren't being taken care of, why are we taking care of all of these minorities? That's where the racism starts coming in the homeless community. Much of it from veterans. They hear BLM fighting for black people and MMIW fighting for missing and murdered indigenous women, but they're missing veteran brothers and sisters nobody cares about. Once in a while, they'll see a flag flying in someone's yard, and that's about it. And of course, then they're told by the government that these guys are veterans. They joined for a bunch of lies, a bunch of stuff that they thought to be true. And then they came back. They lived at mommy and daddy's until they were 18. At 18, they joined the military. Get out of the military when they're 22 or 24. And then that's when they really got to start living life. That's when they really realize that the rules at mommy and daddy's are not quite the same. Their Susie White bread upbringing that they thought was so tough was really jack shit. And that what they thought America was really mom and dad's house. What mom and dad taught them. But it isn't what the real world is. When you say in Jesus' name, so you can manipulate others and get what you want, they'll help you if you say in Jesus' name. But also there's all the bias that we keep pushing on our society, including the homeless community. Even the homeless community has racism and sexism. We have sexism from all sides. We have racism from all sides. We have religious attempts at oppression from all sides. And we've also got a lot of people that will stand up right then and there when something, well, actually, that's not true so much anymore, is it? There's about 30 homeless people there when Jamie got punched in the back of the head. This is a disabled woman in Hood River, can't take care of herself. And people victimize her and beat the hell out of her because she can't take care of herself or protect herself. She's tiny. All she can do is scream. And scream she does. Nobody respects her boundaries. When she says, leave me alone, it means leave me alone, but they don't leave her alone. They will follow her and chase her down so they can assault her. And their excuse is that her screaming is driving them nuts. Well, yeah, it does drive people nuts. Why is she screaming? Because she was talking and you didn't hear her. Now she's been traumatized to the point that she can't communicate. She's too afraid. People say that women have it the worst out of everybody out here, or blacks have the worst out of everybody out here, natives have the worst out of everybody out here. No, everybody's got it horrible. Those of you native women out on the streets being fucking ignored by your own fucking communities. Those of you white people out there on the streets being ignored by your own fucking communities. Those of you black people out on the streets being victimized by your own communities, and all of you being ignored by your own communities, and then you still identify with those communities. Those communities who will ignore you because you're a homeless black man, will ignore you because you are a homeless woman. They may speak out when it is to their benefit about the numbers. That's what you are to them, just a fucking number. Well, you know, there's this many black men out on the streets. But what about the individual black men like Mark Swanigan who are victimized repeatedly and nobody fucking cares? What's the difference between Mark Swanigan and Zaid Atkinson? Zaid Atkinson lived in a house, so people gave a shit. It only happened to him once, and he got a lot of fucking money for it. It happened to Mark Swanigan repeatedly because he's a homeless black... No, he's not a black man. We cannot call him a black man because black America will not accept him because he's homeless. They will not hear him because he's not homeless, or because he's homeless. They will not put his face and his name up as a victim on the news because he's homeless. Oh yeah, and it happened to him repeatedly over and over again. When you're Zaid Atkinson, you're a hero for sticking up for your rights. But when you're Mark Swanigan, you deserved it. You're a predator. You're homeless, so you must have broken the law. Your guilt is assumed. Nobody's going to bother with collecting body camera evidence because it doesn't fucking matter. Not unless somebody in a house cares. And that requires somebody in a house to have a family member to go through that. And unless they're doing very hobo activities like Zaid Atkinson, their family member is not going to be victimized that way by the Boulder Police Department. He looked like a hobo. Yeah, he was a college student, but he looked like a hobo. And he was committing a hobo act. He was committing a homeless act by picking up garbage in Boulder County. Yes, there are many homeless people who have gotten littering tickets or been arrested on trumped up charges because they were busted picking up garbage. Let's say you're walking by the break table at the Cheesecake Factory. Some of them high school kids were just there right after school, messing around, eating their candy that they stole from the little 7-Eleven or the Shell station. And they drop them wrappers on the ground. And when they leave, well, you're weary. You think you can stop. You notice that there's kids there that get to stop and nobody messes with them. And you go over there to sit down for a minute. You take off your backpack and you realize the place is covered in trash. You pick up the trash and here comes Officer Dingledorf. There's no trespassing sign. All the way over there on a different building. I'm not trespassing in a building. I'm sitting at a break table. Lots of people use that table. That was the Cheesecake Factory's break table. That was the excuse. That's for the Cheesecake Factory when those people go on break. Well, guess what? Hispanic people that worked there at the Cheesecake Factory were harassed by police officers for using that break table. That property actually belonged to the pedestrian shop, a shoe store that King and Nichols worked at. We got a lot of immigrants out on the streets too. Each of them convinced that they're exclusively being victimized because they're immigrants. And we got services that are supposed to help the homeless kids. You know, the homeless kids that are out there, most of them aren't homeless. They're fleeing abuse at home and they're looking for love in the wrong places. They're down there trying to get dick and drugs. Or vagina and drugs. Or vagina and alcohol. These are very youthful things to do to try to sow your royal oats or to gain attention or some sense of freedom from oppression by being promiscuous, especially at a young age, and you seek it in the wrong places. And we got all these services because all these people in Boulder do care about the kids. They don't want these kids to be down there and be homeless. Most of them aren't. You're not doing anything about the abuse they're enduring at home. But now they're out there doing damage to themselves. Some of these girls go out there and they do nasty things with homeless men who are around their age. Some of them with men who are much older. We don't want the pedophiles out on our streets either. We also don't all deserve to be treated like pedophiles just because the guy who raped your daughter, her dad, when he got out of prison, nobody wanted to take him. They didn't want to help him out. While he was in prison, his mom and his dad fucking died. There ain't shit for him. Nobody's going to assist him. He's a convicted pedophile. So now he's on the streets with us, and you know he's homeless. And you got some hate campaign against him, but you're taking it out on the homeless. You're teaching your girls that this stuff only happened to them because they're girls. You are throwing it into their head that girls are the victims, girls are the victims, girls are the victims. And that boys are stupid, right? You teach your girls that they're more mature. No, they're more physically mature before boys. But because we tell them that they're more mature instead of impressing upon them that it's just a physical thing, and that will eventually be outgrown. But we teach them that somehow their brains must be better than ours because they mature faster. No, they don't. Many of the women that I know, they stopped maturing mentally as soon as they were developed physically. As soon as they started becoming women, according to many of them, around 13 or 14 years of age, believing themselves to be fully grown women and angry that they're not allowed to do fully grown woman things. They're not allowed to make their own decisions as a woman at 14, and it's unfair. They're more mature than boys. They shouldn't be held back as long as boys. If they want to have sex, they're more mature than boys, so they can better make that decision. And if they want to have sex with a 40-year-old man at 13 years of age, and this is what we homeless people have to be afraid of out of you guys. You sickos, you rape your daughter, Then you become homeless and people want to pretend we're all you. And then she is so fucked up in the head on what sex and love really are. She's out there pursuing somebody who's going to be like her dad. Who, out on the streets, out of these 30 and 40-year-olds that she is pursuing, which ones are actually going to have sex with her? The ones who are pedophiles, the ones who think it's okay. And she obviously thinks it's okay because that's what she's out there trolling for. She doesn't want her dad doing it. She just wants somebody dad-like to protect her. And this is how she shows that she loves her, whatever it is. And then we've got services in Colorado, like Stand Up for Kids. And there's this building that you can go to. And these kids go there and they talk about how creepy it is to be there. This place is to help to get kids off the streets, right? So they go there under the promise of getting services. And the people who are there want to slow the process. They want the kid to hang out all day to get a bus voucher. They want the kid to hang out all day in this facility in order to get a meager service. Oh, we'll have some food brought out to you as fast as we can. And then they're busy for 3.5 hours. What are they busy with? Their sack lunches are prepared by volunteers every morning. These sack lunches are ready when the kid walks in the door because they've been told that there's a sack lunch there, and they get there and they have to wait 2, 3, 4 hours to get that sack lunch. They're going to leave. So they put video games there and they try to entice these kids to stay busy playing video games in this facility. They try to make it a fun hangout, but then they hire creepers who are, well, it's fucking creepy. It is creepy to these fucking kids. Having somebody hover over them, promise them a lunch, but instead he's pushing video games on you. Hey, play the video games, play the video games, play the video games. He's still standing there. He's not getting you a lunch like you were promised. You're not getting your bus voucher. And then you got a bunch of kids there that are permanent stays. They get out of school, they don't want to go home, or their parents don't give a fuck where they're at. They say, hey, I'm going to hang out with Tyler. Do these parents know who Tyler is? No, they don't give a fuck. Many of them are on drugs. They're too fucked up to care where the fuck their kid is. If their kid says he's somewhere, then fine, he's fine. He says he's hanging out with Tyler. Who's Tyler? Tyler's a kid in a very similar situation who's also going to that facility. So they're both hanging out there. And then, of course, these kids, a lot of them start selling drugs out of that facility. Are they taking the drugs into the facilities? Absolutely. Are they making exchanges in the facility? Sometimes. A lot of times they just go to that facility to make new contacts, to meet new people. And then you got that youngin' who's trying to make a profit, who's actually homeless, who's out there and he sees a bunch of marks. And that's exactly what these kids are. Oh my God, this kid's got parents who live in a house and they're out here with money. They don't need these sack lunches. They're here because they're fucking lonely. They're here because their parents don't fucking care. They're here because they got a like-minded person that'll meet up with them there and they can go steal shit from the store and fucking throw their litter on the ground and then go to the source. I don't mean the source is in the source of drugs or the source of all of their pain and problems. I'm talking about the source facility in Boulder. But nobody's doing anything about their abusers. Many of these kids come out here and they want to talk to grown-ass adults about people abusing them at home. And these are homeless adults they're telling it to. Do you know how heartbreaking it is When you're hearing children who are telling you about being raped and molested at home, being beaten by their alcoholic mom and dad, and nobody's doing anything about it, then they become adults. These kids become adults who have idolized the homeless life. They have idolized the drug use. They've idolized the pedophiles. A lot of the little boys that show up, the reason they show up is because there's little girls that show up. Those little girls show up because they're being molested at home and they're looking for love in the wrong place. Those little boys want that love, but those little girls think that they're more mature than they really are. They won't settle for anything but a real man. That being an older father figure who is willing to have sex with them. While all of us out here get treated like we're that pedophile. He couldn't keep his hands off of his own daughters. Now he's out on the streets having sex with your daughter because she's more mature. She's more mature in her own mind, is what it is, because you've taught her that. You taught that black kid who was victimized into homelessness, and it may have been that it was because he was black that he was victimized into homelessness. It may have been because of people's assumptions of black people, that the people who victimized him got away with it, and this is why he's homeless. This is why his finances are gone. This is why his family's gone. But the reality is, all of that treatment on the streets as a homeless person is very specifically because you're a homeless person, especially in Boulder, Colorado. They've covered up no less than 7 rapes by minority football players or athletics department directors at CU since the whole 1990s Boulder athletes are raping people fiasco. So they put these shiny, flashy fucking telephones out in a wide open area, and that is a good idea, sort of. Except that who's going to fucking respond? How many people want to be out in the open when they're trying to hide from a predator calling from one of those phones? How many people want to be ostracized and asked 10 million questions because one of their classmates saw you use that phone, and now they went around and told all the other students that you used that phone, hey, did you see Melissa? Man, I don't know what happened, but Melissa was out there using that phone. Hey, Melissa, what happened the other night? I don't want to talk about it. Well, you used the emergency phone. Were you raped? Were you raped? Hey, who raped you? Who raped you? And they want to just pound her for information. They want to pound her for their assumptions. Sometimes it's that she got beaten up. Sometimes it's that she was hanging out with some friends and picked up the wrong drink. Now she's fucking tripping balls, and she needs help because she's tripping balls because she picked up the wrong drink. There's a lot of people that will drug their own drinks with the intention of drinking those drugs instead of having to swallow them. There's a lot of people that will put mushrooms in their stuff with the intention of consuming those mushrooms. But when you're in a party full of people and you've got somebody who just showed up or is kind of ignorant to the situation, they may consume a bunch of them mushrooms and need to use that fucking phone because they are flipping shit. They don't know what the hell is going on. So then we got these things up, and we've got these women like Teresa Massilia, as well as, what was her name? Was that Hispanic lady who was trying to become a doctor. She wanted to be a pediatrician, I believe, a children's doctor. Well, what happened with that? Teresa Massilia was raped, and she tried to fight off her abuser. One of the officers in her situation, you can hear from one of the witnesses on my YouTube channel about how that very same officer assaulted me with 6 other officers in the Boulder County Jail. This officer is a loose cannon. Now, when she speaks about him, she went to turn this into the cops, and she explains that the way that she was treated by police in Boulder County was worse than being raped. It was worse. Worse. When I say it, you won't listen. Maybe you'll listen to a woman. When I tell you how scary the Boulder police are, maybe you won't listen to me. You'll only listen to a black man like Zaid Atkinson or Samuel Leon Lawrence IV. But what do those 2 men have in common? Roofs over their head. Neither one of them was actually homeless. They were assumed to be homeless and victimized because of that assumption. Because Boulder County knows that nobody gives a fuck about the homeless. They can do whatever they want to the homeless. The majority, 90% of the people they got locked up in Boulder County Jail at any one point in time are homeless people. Most of them are what's called roll-throughs. These are mentally ill people who are thrown out on the streets. Some of them make us look bad. They make the homeless look very bad. Much like we hear many of these white people here want to push the black on black crime. Well, you know, they won't say that the majority of these black people killing black people are other black people. Well, they'll just ignore all of that. Does that make it okay that police are murdering them? Is that a valid excuse? No, it's not. But we get to hear even many people from BLM, their hatred for the homeless. A large quantity of people with BLM hold hatred and bias towards the homeless. It's called redirecting it. When the victimization comes their way, they want to redirect it to someone else. That's why 70% of abusers were victims of abuse growing up. They've learned that that is acceptable. The actions have taught them that it's okay. The actions. Oh, well, when it happened to me and I tried to tell people, nobody cared. So obviously people don't care. Now, I tried to tell over 100 people in the 10 years of my dad raping me repeatedly, and all of that time, nobody cared. So obviously it must be okay. I mean, sure, it's against the law, and people say it's against the law, and they say there's all these horrible things that they would do. But in reality, they don't do those things. And of course, sometimes it feels good. Really? Well, hold on a second here. You've learned that dominating another person is power. Dominating another person makes you feel good. Doing the things that you hated so much when they were done to you, and now you're doing them to another person. For me, for years and years, I tried to lead by example by not doing those things back, not saying those things back, not treating people the way that they treated me, but treating them in a better way. I tried to follow Jesus' example. No, I didn't think I was Jesus. I wanted to make sure that I didn't become a roll-through by people wanting to pretend that because I have PTSD that I'm mentally ill and therefore not worth listening to. I already knew that autism, that many people associate trauma responses with autism. And I already knew that many of our predators use trauma responses from long-term abuse to pretend that we're crazy, to gaslight us. Our predators, when they're our parents, gaslight us to the police. Are they going to listen to the parent or the child? Probably the parent. I know that in my situation with my dad beating the shit out of me because he was a drunken asshole, I know that he didn't do that in front of my stepmom. I know that he also, when he did it, sometimes he would do it over the same thing more than once. Not remembering he'd already beaten me up over it. Out of all of the black people killed by police, the overwhelming majority were homeless. Same thing with disabled people. Same thing with Asians. See, this is one thing that we get out here on the streets a lot. We get to see that all of us are being treated equally shitty, but everybody thinks that it's because of a group that they've assigned themselves to that doesn't give a fuck about them. You have assigned yourself to the black community as a black person. That's how you identify. But as a homeless person, the black community does not give a fuck about you. As an Asian person from Asian descent, you identify as an Asian. But as a homeless person, by and large, the majority of the Asian population does not see you as one of them. They see you as a homeless person with all of the bias contained within. Within the box of homelessness, people's assumption of what homelessness is. And the reality of it, most of these people have never seen the reality of it. When they see 10 homeless people walk by, 9 of them have it pretty well together. You don't even realize they're homeless. They have a place where they can stash their stuff. They have a family member that's letting them use the garage for a bit. Or they got a friend who will let them park the car in their driveway at night and sleep in the car. You just got to be out by 6 a.m. So they're able to leave their stuff in their car. Like me, I don't have to carry around my backpack because I have a car. I also have a lot of evidence I couldn't possibly carry around because of physical injuries. But my physical injuries don't exist. Not to you. To you, you just see a homeless man. And to a black homeless man, I'm a white man who needs to shut up because I get special treatment because I'm white. To a white homeless person, he gets special treatment because BLM will actually fight for his rights. But they're not. That's the realization none of them are getting. Dear black homeless people, BLM doesn't give a fuck about you. Dear white homeless people, the KKK doesn't give a fuck about you. When you're being victimized out as a homeless person, you're homeless because your own community doesn't care about you either. They want their rights for those in houses. They don't want the things that are happening to homeless people to happen to people in houses. That is very specifically the message that your communities are saying. That is very specifically the message that they are sending with their actions. BLM doesn't care that you as a black man were victimized. They don't give a fuck. The fact that you were arrested 30 times in 6 years on bullshit because you were homeless is what they care about. Because that gives them an excuse. You as a black person who has rolled through the system, people calling you mentally ill, so you can't even defend yourself. They're not going to keep you for very long. They're going to drop you back out on the streets with extra charges on your record. And they're going to roll through again as soon as the jail population starts getting low because they need that money. They are dependent upon that money. When Teresa Massilia was raped, they don't want to spend a bunch of money paying out the rapists. So what do? They arrest the victim, Teresa Massilia, and charge her with assault for fighting off her attacker. She was leaving the next day, and he thought, oh, well, this is my last chance. This is my woman. I got to let her know that she's mine. She is my possession, and I'm going to make her. And she tried to fight him off, and she was charged because Boulder covers up for crimes, especially for alumni, especially if you play sports, especially if it will become a very big deal nationwide if people actually listen. Then there's that woman who was trying to become a doctor, and she was raped. And what happened with her? She was charged with making a false report because she didn't fight off her attacker. Now, in many of these situations, officers who committed crimes against me, very specifically the exact same officer by name who committed crimes against these other victims, did those things to me. The fact that this is Boulder, Colorado's protocol for homeless, as well as everyone else in the nation. This is wholeheartedly embraced by the Black community. This is wholeheartedly embraced by the Native community. This is wholeheartedly embraced by the white community. This is wholeheartedly embraced by the Muslim community, by the Christian community, by the Jewish community. It is wholeheartedly embraced by the LGBT community. The majority of the LGBT community being victimized are homeless. That's why they're victimized over and over again. But also because they are victimized over and over again, even by their own communities. Black people going out and beating on a black homeless person. Gay people going out and raping another gay person because they're homeless and they can get away with it. And we are supposed to turn a blind eye to this because we're harming the black cause by pointing out that black people are coming down and killing my people. That black man that you killed is not a part of your community. He wants to be a part of your community. He fights hard for your community because he wants to feel a part of it. He wants to feel that you care about him as a black man the same as you care about Sammy Leon Lawrence IV and, of course, Zaid Atkinson. But still, after all these years of being a roll-through, of being treated like he's guilty because he exists as a homeless person, being railroaded over and over again because the black community will not tell his story. They will not look at his story. They will only use his numbers. Oh, look, black people are disproportionately arrested in Boulder, Colorado. No. 6 black people, all homeless, all of them roll-throughs, account for over 90% of that. Over 90% of that comes from specifically 6 black homeless males. Are they disproportionately victimized by the police in Boulder, Colorado compared to their white counterparts? Absolutely they are. There's even a running joke about it that's not funny. There's a charge in Boulder. It's called Black in Boulder. That's the joke. It's not funny, is it? The reality is, as a black homeless man, yes, you are more likely to get fucked with per capita than the white people around you who are also homeless. It is not a significant amount greater. But Zach Boatman is a white man that they have as a roll-through who spent 80% of 2 whole years of his life in jail as a roll-through. 80% of that 2 years on roll-through charges. This is a man who is schizophrenic and thinks he's Satan, thinks he's Lucifer. And then you want to treat us all like we're all mentally ill. We're all Zach Boatmans. But Zach Boatman is a roll-through. They use his disabilities anytime that they want to press false charges on someone or to pretend that some crime has been solved. Well, just Pin it on Zach Boatman. He doesn't really know what's going on. He thinks he's fucking Satan. He's not going to stand up to a jury. We automatically fucking win. Well, sometimes they fuck with the wrong man. Or the wrong woman. Sometimes they see you as a poor person. They see you out there dressed with dirty boots and dirty jeans and a dirty jacket with holes in it. You got your hair done up and it's dreaded like the hobo hippies be wearing. You got a grabber like that James feller. What does he do? This guy's been picking up Boulder, Colorado for over 20 years. With one of those grabbers just like Zaid Atkinson had. And a bucket just like Zaid Atkinson had. And dirty boots just like Zaid Atkinson had. And work pants like Zaid Atkinson had. And a dirty Carhartt with a hood. And then, of course, you want to associate that dirty Carhartt with homelessness as an officer, because you see so many people out there, they give away their old work Carhartt when they get a new Carhartt. Or they hire you on as a homeless person for a few days to do some work for them, but it gets chilly and they give you their old jacket. Or, of course, you used to work for a living in heavy construction. And, of course, you didn't have a whole lot of good gear when you ended up homeless. You had to decide what you could carry on your back, and you wanted stuff that'll help to represent the fact that you're a working man. You work construction. If you go in, you can show them you got your dirty Carhartt, you've been busting your ass. Of course, they don't want that in an interview. But you're not thinking that when you're being forced into homelessness. You're thinking to yourself, I'm going to have to prove it. You think you're going to carry around all your papers in your backpack so that you don't end up in a screwed up situation. But then it rains and ruins your stuff, or you think somebody's going to watch your stuff for 5 minutes while you go to the bathroom and you come back and you're like, fuck. I had $800 in my goddamn backpack. It was the last of my money, and I was going to fucking go do this, and this so that I can actually go to work, and holy fuck, all of my money's gone. All of my everything's gone over and over again. And of course, if it's a black person, it's, well, they did it because I'm black. They wouldn't have done this to a white man. When the white man, it happens to him, he says, man, they wouldn't have done this to an Asian. Everybody would have fucking thrown up alarms if this happened to an Asian person or a black person. You got the gay person that happens to, wanting to say, well, if this would have happened to a straight person, you guys would actually care. And then we got the straight guy going, you know what? If they did this to a gay person, we'd have gay pride and LGBT all up in this. The news would be all over this if it was a gay person. No! That gay person who was victimized, who was on the news, lived in a fucking house. That woman who was victimized, who was on the news, lived in a fucking house. That black man who was on the news lived in a fucking house. They live in houses. The people you care about live in houses. Those of you on the streets, BLM doesn't give a fuck about you, Mark Swanigan. MMIW doesn't give a fuck about you, Chelsea. They don't give two shits. You're fucking homeless. Me Too doesn't give a fuck about you, Desiree. You're fucking homeless. And the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless doesn't give a fuck about you. They care about getting paid. Whatever reason you were forced into homelessness, that ain't the reason that you're being victimized as a homeless person. You believe that the only person that was actually screwed out there was you, and that everybody else need to take care of themselves, and you take care of yourself. Well, how the fuck is that working for you? You're still a Muslim. You're a very hateful Muslim now because you've been out there for 10 years and the Muslim community is not helping you. They're not helping you to get unhomeless. It must be because the other homeless people are lazy. Well, all right. I can't say that about your community, can I? I'm not allowed to say Muslims are lazy when you're being lazy, or when you're committing an act that you're accusing other people of being lazy for. You're weary and your fucking back hurts. You've been walking around for a whole fucking week with that backpack as a Muslim. You want to lay down and take a fucking break and take your backpack off. But you're sitting there in a public area because you have nowhere else to go. And you're laying there lazily for 4 hours, almost able to get some sleep because it's daytime, but people wanting to keep on coming up and talking to you. And then, of course, because nobody helped you, you're not going to help anybody else, and you're going to be angry with them and tell them, well, nobody helped me. Well, nobody helped me. And you're not willing to help anybody either, which is why you're in this situation. Your Muslim community, that you want to pretend that all of us out here who aren't Muslims, it couldn't be happening to us because we're not Muslims. And your Muslim community is not taking care of you. We are. Your Muslim community is not coming down to see you. We are. Your black community is not providing you with food. We are. They're not providing you with the access to these services or where they're at or any of the information about that because they simply don't give a fuck. They've never looked it up. They've never had to have a reason to look it up. They've never been in that situation. They just fear it. Every poor person in America fears homelessness because we're close enough when we're poor to see the reality of the situation and to experience the victimization ourselves firsthand because we're poor. But we don't realize until we're homeless how desperately we fuck up by allowing it to happen to others because we're glad it's not happening to us. That woman who has a good boyfriend has a good chance of getting up and out and not being homeless anymore. They both have a very good chance. The one who has an abusive boyfriend at least has less of a chance of being victimized over and over by multiple assailants because that one assailant simply being there is deterrent to most of them. If somebody wants to rape you as a woman out on the homeless circuit and they know where your bush is and which one you sleep under and you sleep there alone, they're more likely to do something to you and you know it. If you've got a boyfriend, sure, he got drunk last night and had quasi-unconsensual sex. You didn't want to have sex. He did. You let him do it because you don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the night. If somebody walks by and sees you and your boyfriend, they're much less likely to try to do something to you because first they got to stop your boyfriend and you. Ain't enough hands to put a hand over both of your mouths and try to kill you. He can't subdue you and prevent you from screaming at the same time. He's going to have to do some very desperate things, very horrible things if there's two of you. And he's going to have to commit to much worse acts. And he's going to have to put up a lot more risk of himself So yeah, even the bad boyfriend on the homeless circuit is better than nothing for a lot of women, but it's also the same thing for men. If you've got a woman there and there's a woman who can't take no for an answer because she's severely mentally ill, as in delusional or schizophrenic, well, she might live in a house and have a family who cares. So if you've got a girlfriend there and this schizophrenic lady comes up claiming that you're her husband and you owe her some this and you owe her some that, and you won't give her what she wants, and she runs around claiming that you raped her or you molested her, well, at least your girlfriend was there. And hopefully there was somebody there with the, well, foresight enough to pull out a fucking camera if they have access to it. And there's no guarantee that even if they have a phone, that they have access to even use it, because they may have been harassed, threatened, intimidated, and assaulted previously by law enforcement for simply plugging into a public power outlet. Boulder, Colorado, the police extorted hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines from homeless people for using public power outlets for years before being told it's unconstitutional. But did they care? No, they'd already gotten the money and they'd already fucking spent it, and nobody's going to fucking do a goddamn thing about it. And then there's the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are spent to incarcerate a person for just 1 year on one of them trumped up charges. You guys say that they deserve it. These hobos deserve it. These black people don't deserve it. These white people don't deserve it. These Asians don't deserve it. But these homeless people do. What about the homeless Asians? What about the homeless blacks? What about the homeless whites? What about the homeless men or women? Each of these groups that you want to blame or claim to be a part of, homelessness encompasses nearly every one of them. And then, of course, when you've got black homeless people brainwashed into believing that BLM gives a fuck about them and that this is exclusively happening to black people and that everybody else around them must deserve it when it's happening to them, these homeless black men see this happening to homeless white men and will literally tell the homeless white man that he has special privileges because he's white and therefore must have deserved it. They would not have targeted him illegally because he's not black, because he's not Asian, because he's not gay, because he's not a woman. Fuck it. No victim left behind, you pieces of shit. Not even the homeless. Good to be rid of you. Thank you for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.